My name is Tori Myers, and for most of my life, I believed family was supposed to protect you. I was wrong. The night my family finally realised what they had done to me, nobody could meet my eyes. Nobody could find the words. They sat frozen in silence while I stood in a room that I had paid for. But that moment didn't happen overnight. It started 7 years earlier. Back then, I was 25 years old and living in Seattle. I worked long nights in a tiny recording studio, chasing a dream that nobody in my family respected. To me, music wasn't a hobby. It was my future. To my mother, Sharon Myers, it was a childish phase. To my father, Glenn Myers, it was a waste of time. And to my younger sister, Rachel, it was simply another reason she could feel superior. Rachel had always been the favourite. She never had to earn attention. She never had to fight for approval. While I struggled to prove myself, Rachel received praise simply for existing. For 3 years, I dated Brandon Collins. I truly loved him. I imagined a future with him. I imagined marriage, a home, children, a life. I thought he loved me too. I couldn't have been more wrong. One Sunday evening, my parents invited us all to dinner. At first, everything seemed normal. The smell of roasted chicken filled the house. Family members laughed around the table. I remember feeling happy, safe. I had no idea my entire world was about to collapse. Halfway through dinner, my father placed his fork down and looked directly at Brandon. "Son," he said, "have you ever thought about your future?" Brandon looked confused. "What do you mean?" My father sighed dramatically. "You need stability, a real plan." My mother nodded. "Love isn't enough." Then something happened that still makes my stomach turn. My father slowly turned toward Rachel. My mother smiled. And suddenly both of them began talking about how perfect Brandon and Rachel would be together. As if I wasn't sitting there. As if I didn't exist. The room filled with awkward laughter. Some relatives smiled. Others avoided eye contact. Nobody defended me. Nobody stopped them. Nobody said it was cruel. I looked at Brandon, expecting him to speak. To tell them he loved me. To stand beside me. Instead, he stayed silent. That silence hurt more than anything. I left the table in tears. Not one person followed me, not even Brandon. 4 months later, he proposed to Rachel. 4 months. 3 years of love erased in 4 months. The announcement appeared all over social media. Rachel smiling proudly. Brandon holding the ring. My parents celebrating. Everyone congratulating them, everyone except me. That was the day I bought a one-way ticket to Austin. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't explain. I simply left. Austin wasn't magical. It wasn't some movie transformation. It was brutal. There were nights I cried myself to sleep. Days I questioned every decision I'd ever made. I rented half of a converted garage because it was all I could afford. I worked constantly. Podcast editing, audio mixing, recording local musicians, cleaning equipment, writing advertisements, anything that paid. Some weeks I survived on instant noodles. Other weeks I wasn't sure how I'd pay rent. But there was one thing Austin gave me that Seattle never had: freedom. Nobody compared me to Rachel. Nobody mocked my dreams. Nobody told me who I should become. For the first time, my life belonged to me. 3 years passed. Then one rainy Tuesday night, everything changed. I attended an open mic performance downtown. A musician stepped onto the stage. The moment I saw him, I froze. Eli Brooks. 7 years earlier, Eli had been one of the most talented musicians I'd ever met. Back then, we'd become close friends. My family hated him. They said he was going nowhere. They said he was a failure. Eventually, he disappeared from my life. Or so I thought. After his performance, we talked for hours. We shared stories, failures, dreams, regrets. Eventually, our conversation turned toward Seattle, toward my family, toward that terrible Sunday dinner. That was when Eli told me something that changed everything. A week after that dinner, my mother had secretly contacted him. She told him to stay away from me. She said he would only distract me, that he would drag me down, that he wasn't good enough for our family. Then Eli opened his guitar case. Inside was an old folded lyric sheet. He handed it to me. At the bottom was my father's handwriting. 5 words. "Get a real job, kid." I stared at those words for a long time. 7 years. 7 years of pain. 7 years of self-doubt. And suddenly I realised something. The people who judged me most harshly had never believed in me to begin with. Nothing I did would ever earn their approval. So I stopped trying. That night changed my life. Eli and I began working together. He brought talent. I brought production. We started helping unknown artists. Teenagers rejected by record labels. Singers ignored by talent agencies. Songwriters nobody believed in. People just like us. The first project failed. The second failed. The third barely survived. But the fourth exploded online. Millions of views. Millions of streams. Suddenly, everyone wanted to know who we were. Then another artist succeeded. Then another. Then another. 3 years later, we owned one of the fastest growing independent music companies in Texas. Artists signed with us. Investors approached us. National tours followed. Awards followed. Success followed. Money followed. more money than I ever imagined. Meanwhile, my family remained convinced I was struggling. They never asked. They preferred believing I had failed. The story fit their narrative. I let them believe it. Then one winter afternoon, I received a phone call. My aunt sounded nervous. "Tori, your father's health is getting worse." My heart sank. Despite everything, he was still my father. Doctors were worried. His heart condition had become serious. For the first time, mortality entered the conversation. A few weeks later, I learned something else. Rachel and Brandon were drowning in debt. The perfect couple wasn't so perfect anymore. The luxury home, the expensive cars, the vacations. Most of it had been financed. Behind their smiles was financial disaster. A month later, an invitation arrived. My parents' 40th wedding anniversary. Family only. Everyone would attend. Rachel, Brandon, relatives, friends, everyone. I nearly threw the invitation away. Then I thought about my father, and I accepted. The evening arrived. I wore a simple black dress. Nothing flashy, nothing designed to impress. Eli accompanied me. As we entered the ballroom, conversation stopped. People stared. Whispers spread across the room. Not because of designer clothes, not because of luxury, because success looked different from what they expected. My mother hugged Rachel immediately. Of course she did. Then she approached me. For the first time in my life, she looked uncertain. Dinner began. People discussed weather, travel, children, sports, anything except the past. Nobody mentioned Brandon, nobody mentioned Betrayal, nobody mentioned Seattle. Everyone pretended history didn't exist. Then the ballroom doors opened. A man in a grey suit entered. He walked directly toward my father. In his hands was a folder. The room grew quiet. My father opened it. His face changed instantly. Confusion, shock, disbelief, then tears. "What is it?" my mother asked. No answer. "What happened?" Rachel asked. Still nothing. My father continued reading. Finally he looked up. His voice trembled. "The debt is gone." Nobody understood. "The house," he whispered. "It's paid off." My mother's eyes widened. Rachel looked terrified. "What do you mean paid off?" The man smiled politely. "The mortgage and associated debts have been settled in full." The room exploded with questions. Who paid it? How? Why? The man slowly turned toward me. Every eye followed. Every conversation died. Every breath seemed to stop. It was handled by Ms. Tori Myers. Silence. Absolute silence. The kind of silence that only appears when people realise they've been wrong for years. My mother looked stunned. Rachel couldn't speak. Brandon stared at the floor. My father lowered his head. Tears rolled down his face. Then Eli stood up. Without saying a word, he reached into his jacket. He removed an old folded lyric sheet. The same one, 7 years old, 5 handwritten words. "Get a real job, kid." He placed it in the centre of the table. Nobody touched it. Nobody defended it. Nobody laughed. Nobody had an excuse. Because there wasn't one. For years they had treated me like I wasn't enough. Not talented enough. Not successful enough. Not worthy enough. They stole my confidence. They stole my relationship. They stole years of my life. Yet when they needed help, I helped anyway. Not because they deserved it, but because I deserved peace. That was the difference. Success hadn't made me cruel. It had made me free. My father finally stood and walked toward me. His hands shook. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Those words were 7 years late. But they were real. My mother cried. Rachel cried. Even Brandon looked ashamed. For the first time, nobody was pretending. For the first time, they saw me. Not as Rachel's sister. Not as the family disappointment. Not as the girl they could ignore. They saw me as the woman who had survived without them. The woman who built everything they said she never could. 7 years earlier, they decided I didn't deserve a seat at their table. Years later, I returned not for revenge, but for closure. Because the sweetest revenge isn't watching people suffer. It's becoming so successful that their opinions no longer control your life. And as I looked around that silent room, I realised something. I hadn't come back to prove them wrong. I had come back because I no longer needed to. I was already living the life they said was impossible. And that was enough.